around 2011, I started to look for free grounds to use and set or plant vineyards. That's how I found the meadows up there in Contrada Palui. We are pretty high up for Valpolicella. We're at 500 meters because there's not much land left further below. And we found this wonderful place on a hill crest at 550 meters, totally sunny, ventilated, which is also very important if you want to work organic, and just very suited for doing wine, even though the local people said it was too high up. I believed it wasn't. And that again has to do with me being from South Tyrol. So, my a bit naive approach was, well, we are going up to 1,000 meters. So what is 500 meters? That's a joke. So I said, we're going to plant there. And then later on, I realized that it wasn't that easy after all.
Welcome to this special Clubhouse session of the Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as members of the Italian wine community engage in fascinating conversations about contemporary wine topics. If you enjoyed the show, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. And remember to subscribe and rate the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your pods.
Hi everyone, my name is Beatrice and welcome to Italian Wine Clubhouse Ambassador's Corner. Our Clubhouse has been ranking the top amongst Italian wine podcast shows. The show's concept is to let Italian wine ambassadors have the opportunity to interview their favorite producers. This is an episode that gives them a free hand to ask any questions to their selected producer. This session is recorded and will be released in Italian Wine Podcast to reach more listeners, and especially for those who cannot participate due to time zone differences. Our guest host today is Roza Zharmukhambetova, our Italian wine ambassador from Almaty. She started her journey in wine in Beijing, working for a wine importing company focused on wines from Chile. Later, she decided to focus on Italian wines in particular. That's how she has ended up with passing the Vinitaly International Academy program in Verona in 2024, and later last year she joined the Italian Wine Podcast team with me. She is also a certified Valpolicella specialist, Langhe Wines ambassador, and Italian wine scholar within Wine Scholar Guild. Today she's gonna interview Hannes Pichler of Contrada Palui in Valpolicella. So Roza, Hannes, how you doing, guys?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you. All good. Happy to be back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's gonna be fun.
It's a pleasure. So Roza, are you ready for our 3 ritual questions?
Yeah, sure. Always ready.
So, how did you discover the wines from Contrada Palui?
All right, so the first time I met Hannes was during Amarone Anteprima in 2023, so 2 years ago. I don't think that Hannes remembers me from that time, but so same year I took Valpolicella specialist course in Verona, organized by the Valpolicella Consortio that organizes the course and the Anteprima every year. And Hannes was one of the exhibitors there. My fellow colleagues who also took the course with me, they highly recommended me to try his wines. And the wines are super good. And Hannes also a very nice person to talk to. So I remembered him from that time.
So you have to thank your colleagues on this magical happening that is this interview, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. That was a very good recommendation from them.
Yeah. And why did you select Hannes as your featured producer?
So as I already said, the wines are good, they're wonderful. But for me, it's also important to share an interesting story and people's journeys in wine. And I think Hannes has a really interesting story to share with us. That is why I decided to invite him as the featured producer for this series.
I can't wait to hear this story, but before, what are the learning objectives that we should expect from this interview?
Okay, so first of all, we're going to discover the personal story and values that inspired Hannes to create Contrada Palui from scratch in Valpolicella Hills. We're going to know the story of the winery, which is very interesting. And we're going to understand the winery's approach to wine growing and also winemaking, and how this approach shapes the character of Valpolicella and Amarone wines that he creates. third, we're going to gain some insights into how Hannes sees Contrada Palui evolving in the future and how it fits into the broader conversation about sustainability, identity, and innovation in Italian wine.
That sounds like a really nice plan, so it's time for me to mute myself. Now I'm turning over the floor to you, Roza, and have a nice interview, guys. See you later.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, Hannes, and thank you so much for finding time to have this conversation with us today.
Well, thank you very much, Rosa. Thanks for choosing me as a talking partner. And yeah, you set the stakes really high. So let's hope I have really interesting things to say.
Okay, so sometimes I have lots of questions, and the episodes that I record, they might be a little bit long. So let's go right away to the first question that I have. First of all, let's talk about your personal journey. So can you tell us about your early memories growing up around your grandfather's vineyard in South Tyrol? Because this is actually what you sent me. As a little boy, he could not get enough of the grapes in his grandfather's wine estate in St. Justina above Bolzano and regularly returned home with a stomach ache. The farm was lost when he was a teenager, but the grapes and wine never left him. So can you tell us a little bit about this story?
Yeah, sure, yeah. It really was a very nice period. I was really small, and my grandfather had inherited this wonderful estate, and in fact, his grandfather was a winemaker, and his grandfather again, or the father of his grandfather as well. So it was a long tradition of winemakers. But my grandfather actually broke the tradition and became a medical doctor. But he inherited this estate, and as a kid, we just went up with my parents, my mother, in particular, and yeah, it was just wonderful to roam around the wines. I always loved them because I really find vines a very beautiful plant. They're very aesthetic, and they grow, and over time you really can see they become old, and they have this wrinkled skin, and it's beautiful, and nonetheless they have this wonderfully bright green leaves. And of course, in autumn or late summer, they also make these wonderful fruits. And of course, as a kid, we were talking about the 70s, the grapes were all very well treated at the time with lots of lots of stuff, I guess. And of course, nobody of us washed anything. We just ate it from the stem, and that led to the belly aches and a little bit too much of grapes. So that's very fond memories. Unfortunately, I was like 10, 11. The estate was sold because my grandparents had needed the money. So that was gone, unfortunately. Would I always have loved to keep it. And so that's why I sort of, yeah, I've always stayed with wine in my heart and in my mind in a way, but I've never really had the means to do anything.
Yeah, sometimes listening to this kind of stories, to be honest, I envy people who had an opportunity to grow up among the vineyards, because I remember from my childhood that together with my family, till I was like 9 or something, we used to go to the potato fields. So nothing romantic about potatoes. Like grapes sound more interesting and romantic. So you went and studied in Oxford, work in London, Milan before you decided to return to South Tyrol. And was there a specific turning point for you when you realized that you wanted to go back to the land and to your roots and make wine yourself?
Yeah, people in South Tyrol, which is where I come from, which is the very, very high north of Italy, Bolzano, Merano, these cities, and I'm actually from Bolzano, which is the largest city there. For us, we are very deeply rooted in our mountain environment, and we are also a bilingual area, so we speak German and Italian, and therefore we are culturally quite a closed area in a way, sort of we quite stay amongst ourselves, even though we are on a big trading route, and we really love the mountains. I've always loved the mountains. I've always done rock climbing, mountaineering, hiking, stuff like that. When I went away to London, it was actually pretty harsh. I went to the LSE to study international relations, and I did that because I loved studying international politics and economics. But when I came to London, it was really, for me, it was pretty tough because I had never been to London before. So I just plumped into that huge city. I loved it there then with time, but I never really lost the connection to South Tyrol. And then I went back to Milan because I always wanted to work in a big Italian city, because we in Alto Adige are a bit Italians that have a bit of a different language. If your mother tongue is German, and then culturally we are a bit somewhere in between. So for me, it was important to work in Milan. But Milan at the time, we were talking about end 90s, was not a brilliant city, not as brilliant as London. And then at some point, by chance, I met my now wife, who is South Tyrolean, but we actually met in Milan, which is quite funny as a story. And sooner or later, she returned, and then at some point, I also decided to return. It was mainly because I'm deeply rooted and I love the mountains and I love our landscape. Yeah, that's mainly why I came back. But it wasn't primarily to make wine because I didn't have the means to make wine at the time. That came only later because returning to South Tyrol, I went into renewable energies. The market in Italy was just starting in photovoltaic, and I went into that market first as a consultant for a German firm, and then we set up our own firm, and that went pretty well. And at some point, I had earned a little bit of money, so I could do something in wine, and that's when I decided to come to Valpolicella.
Okay, so that is interesting that you actually chose Valpolicella to start the winery. Contrada Palui is not just a winery, it's a project that you built from scratch, just started anew. As given in the information on the website, the area, the wine growing area, is on the hay meadows. And can you tell us how you found this land near Verona and what gave you the confidence to start planting exactly in that area?
Yeah, as you said before, like I've always wanted to stay or do something with wine, and I really loved it. I never became a big collector because I never had the money to collect big wines, but I always, every occasion to taste good wines was a good occasion, and I tried to buy the wines that I could buy. So that's never left me. And I had earned a little bit of money, but not that much as to buy vineyards, particularly in Alto Adige, where vineyards are extremely expensive. They're probably the highest priced vineyards in Italy, apart from a few Barolo Crus. And there is no land left in Alto Adige, so you can't really buy hay meadows and plant vines because there is no hay meadows left where vines would grow. So almost every square meter is used for vineyards or apple trees. So that's why I looked elsewhere. And I looked into Valpolicella mainly also because I really had fallen in love with the whole appassimento grape drying stuff that has always been done there. This is a very long tradition, centuries of tradition. Recioto is a Stone Age old wine. And the mere fact of selecting the grapes, putting them to dry, and then observe the drying process, and then also the transformation of the grapes during that time is wonderful. So I really had fallen in love with that. So I went to look for some fields which I could use. And of course, also Valpolicella had not been sleeping over the last decades. Actually, the Amarone boom had already started in the 90s and was at full force in the 2000s. And so around 2011, I started to look for free grounds to use and set or plant vineyards. That's how I found the meadows up there in Contrada Palui. We are pretty high up for Valpolicella. We're at 500 meters because there's not much land left further below. So the option was to go higher up, and we found this wonderful place on a hill crest at 550 meters, totally sunny, ventilated, which is also very important if you want to work organic, and just very suited for doing wine, even though the local people said it was too high up. I believed it wasn't. And that again has to do with me being from South Tyrol, because in South Tyrol, Alto Adige, we last decades have started going very high up with vines. There are Pinot Noir vineyards at 1,000 meters above sea level. So, my a bit naive approach was, well, we are going up to 1,000 meters. So what is 500 meters? That's a joke. So I said, we're going to plant there. And then later on, I realized that it wasn't that easy after all.
Got it. So, because we already started talking about the vineyards and you already mentioned the elevation, could you please tell us more about the soil types, the terroir itself? What kind of soil types you have in that particular area, and also how they complement your organic farming?
Yeah, we have very interesting soil types because if you're high up on a hill crest, of course, water is an issue. Water, the whole Valpolicella area is based on flintstone and chalk. So those fields normally water disappears and there is not much water retention normally, which is an issue. And if you are on the hill crest, of course, there is nothing higher up. you will face problems with water because in Verona and surrounding areas, you will have or you can have 2 to 3 months without serious rainfall. So that is very important for you. And what we found up there were limestone-based fields with some part of clay, which is great because it adds to the complexity of the grapes and the wines, but it also retains a bit of water, which is very good. So we can bridge the drought seasons really well. And then when we planted the vines, and that's a funny story, then we figured out when we worked the earth we moved the earth to plant the vines, we actually found out that there was not just limestone there, but there was also basalt, which is very strange because limestone normally is sedimentary. So why is there basalt? There's just a volcano. But I figured out later on, talking to the geologist who is doing a study for the Consorzio della Valpolicella, that there were small chimneys in that area which brought up lava from underneath and spit it out. So you actually find these small areas which have this basalt, which is quite interesting. But primarily, and that is where we have a very special place, that we have a lot of that we have a lot of flint. Flint, firestone is very rare. Yeah, and that's actually quite a funny story because we worked the earth and suddenly there was a couple of men who turned up and they were starting to look for something, and I already froze. I said like, oh my God, what kind of governmental agency is looking into what here? So I went up to them and I asked what they were doing, and they said, well, no, sorry, can we just we just want to look for splinters of flint which have been, or pieces of flint which have been handwork. And I said, like, why handwork? Yeah, because this is an area where in the Stone Age people produced arrowheads and knives and these kind of things. So I went, oh my God, yeah, that sounds interesting. And so I went onto Google, our friend Google, and I researched the thing, and I found a study which talks about Contrada Palui as an area of flint instrument production in Stone Age, and that's quite fascinating. So we have a geologically very interesting soil with like limestone, basalt, flint, and all of that adds, of course, to the expressiveness of our grapes.
And here I have a question about the name Palui. Is there a way to describe this word in English? Or maybe there is an exact word in English so we could know the meaning?
Yeah, Contrada is basically the farm, means farm, or like a bit of a larger farm where like several farmers were living and they share the land around it, basically. Yeah, that's what Contrada means. Palui is quite a contradiction in the sense that Palui comes from palude and means swamp. Now, it's very difficult to imagine a swamp on a hill crest, right? So there, water will go down and not stay firm there. So I went to investigate that too, and I asked the farmers and that live around there, and also the owners of the land that actually I bought at the time. They were very old people, and they were very happy also to pass the land on to someone who was actually doing something with it, because most people there if you don't do wine or stuff like that, the land isn't being used for other purposes. So that's why they had been hay meadows for like a long time. And so I asked them what the story was behind that. And then they said, well, have you seen behind that small hill or like the small crest, there is a small pond which never loses water. I said, yeah, I had noticed that. Like, in fact, there's always water there. And then they said, yeah, that's actually what the case. So even when it doesn't rain for like 2 or 3 months, there will always be water over there in that small pond because for some reason the layers of limestone carry the water back up again. And that was extremely valuable to them before you had water pipes bringing up water from the valley. So, they all were farmers that had a few cows or stuff like that, and they always needed water, even during drought. So to have that pond and have access to water all the time was fantastic. So that's why they gave it the name Palui. So like the swamp farm, even though, we are quite evidently not in a swamp.
Okay, thanks a lot for sharing the story behind the name. I think it's pretty interesting to know. And now let's move to the farming. So you practice organic farming and you avoid chemicals completely. And what are some of the challenges of this approach that you see in an area like Valpolicella? Some of them you already mentioned. If there is something more to say about that, about the challenges, would be nice to know. And how do you think, what are the long-term benefits that we can expect of organic farming in Valpolicella?
Well, it's very difficult for me to talk about the whole of Valpolicella. There's lots of producers that have been there for a very long time and so on. I come from other businesses, other sectors. I went in there because I want to do something in wine and I wanted to do it in a particular way. For me, organic farming is the standard today, or it should be the standard. There is no point in not doing organic farming because it works and it works everywhere. It just needs you to do a little bit more work than you would do it if you don't do it. Of course, you have to be very careful. You have to go in whenever rain is closed and stuff like that. But it does work, and I simply believe that we do need to protect the environment. We also do need to signal that to our children, to the future generations, and we also need to make sure that the vines themselves stay well. And organic farming is definitely the better way to do it. The challenges certainly are there. We all know what oidium can do. We all know what peronospora can do, and all of these are problems. In terms of peronospora, we have quite a fortunate situation because we are high up and it's ventilated and very sunny. So the leaves will dry up very quickly, and also the grapes after a rainfall, which helps us, with protecting ourselves against peronospora. Where we have hardly any oidium either, but that's more of a challenge, if anything, because it's ventilated, so it goes from one plant to the other if it's there. But you just have to be careful and use sulfur to protect the vines from it. And if you go into our vineyards, as you go into any kind of organic vineyard, you will just see a fauna that you won't find in a traditional vineyard. It's as simple as that. It starts from spiders of all colors and sizes to small animals and flies and wasps that make their nest in our vineyards where they find a hole somewhere. So, that is a sign that they feel quite well there. And that's, I think, how it should be. I mean, in the end, we are asking, it sounds very romantic, but in the end, we are asking nature to give us a fruit. And, it's not an industrial product. This is not a chocolate bar in a way.
Well, yeah, that was well said. And now let's move to the cellar. I told you already because I have so many questions and I would like to ask as many as I can. So let's talk about cellar. You've converted an old hay barn into a winery, and in the winery, you use a mix of amphora and barrels. So, what role do these vessels, each of them, play in your winemaking in particular?
Yeah, I've always loved to play around with things. So all of these vessels and containers add something to the wines. Wood, of course, is fundamental also for Amarone because it gives it tannins and it gives it structure because the grapes are very intense, after all this drying and stuff like that. But I have started working from the beginning with clay amphora because I actually spent a year as director of bigger winery for a strategic project, more as a consultant. But then I saw there that they were using amphora. Then I tried the fresh wines after they had been put in there, like over some months. And I figured out that it was really amazing what it was doing to the wine because it gives it oxygen, it opens the wines, it takes out the fruity and the flowery notes a lot, so it opens them up without adding, what the wood does, which is vanilla notes, chocolate notes, and stuff like that. So it doesn't release tannins or other stuff. It does release something of a slight undergrowth taste in some cases, but it's quite nice. And it opens up the fruit. And for me, they're very, very important, particularly for our grape varieties, because we do have grape varieties that are very fruity, and therefore, expressing the fruit even more is advantageous. And that's why I try and play around with the different vessels in order to reach the balance and equilibrium and expression that I look for.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So, your wines, you produce Amarone, Valpolicella Superiore, Valpolicella, but also you produce the Rosato. It has a very interesting name, by the way. I just want to quickly ask you how to pronounce the name of the Rosato wine, and then we move on to Valpolicella.
Yeah, it's called Bera Rosa. Yeah, that sounds really strange, but I'm German from mother tongue. So, I have this, we are minority in Italy, and slightly beyond my winery, Contrada Palui, like just a couple of kilometers further north, you have the Lessinia. And in the Lessinia, there is a very old German people living there that came there in the Middle Ages, and they are called Cimbri nowadays, still today. And they speak a very old German dialect. And this word comes from that very old German dialect. And Bera Rosat means pink cloud. And rosé is pink. That's why, it's a fantasy name, of course, but it's a homage to that minority inside the minority.
All right. Thank you so much for telling us how to pronounce it. So let's go back to Valpolicella. So three types, three styles: Amarone, Valpolicella Superiore, and Valpolicella. How would you describe the house style of Contrada Palui? What sets your wines apart and how they're different from other wines?
Yeah. As we said before, no, we are at 550 meters for Valpolicella. That is pretty high because as I then discovered myself there, when I first arrived, the farmers who sold us the land, they said like, well, what are you going to do here? You're going to plant wines there? And I said like, yes, but you plant corn here or stuff like that, but you don't do wine here. This is too high up. And I said like, well, no, this is going to work. Don't worry. And so I did it and it turned out to work. We are high up, so we have a very good acid structure. We have very crispy fruit. We have a very light expression. We have this minerality that comes from our particular soil. This is what I try and get into the bottle. We have a very crunchy fruit expression, and I try to get that crunchy expression into the bottle, also in the Amarone. I want the fruit to talk, and I want our terroir, our exposure, our altitude to talk in the wines and not hide it away. Maybe someone else being high up and having more acidity would try and leave more residual sugar or whatever in order to get it broader, get it wider. But I think our house style is to really keep to what we have and try and get the best out of it. And I think we can say that we have seen that it actually comes out pretty well because the fruit is very nice and crunchy.
Yeah, and again, your Amarone is really delicious and really elegant, fresh, and quite mineral. Yeah, despite the fact that the winery is small, but I think you're doing pretty good job with your wines. Okay, I'm just looking at the time. So let's talk about the market now, because as I said, your wines gaining attention from somms and wine lovers also, and actually they were recommended to me by my fellow friends from the industry too. Where are your main export markets today, and where would you love to see Contrada Palui in the future?
Well, first of all, thank you for appreciating our wines. I'm glad that this style works. It is a style that surprises some people, but in the end, just let me say one word about it. Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella, those are the three grapes that we use. We don't use anything else. The Valpolicella regulation allows you to put in other grapes as well, but I focus only on these, which are the autochthonous traditional grapes, primarily because they are really, really nice. Specifically, Corvina is a very beautiful grape. They are bright in color, but very fruity, very crunchy, very, very interesting expression. And we try to express that. Today, my wines are, of course, in Italy, northern Italy mainly, in Alto Adige. Yeah, about 40% of my production goes to the United States, and about 20 to 30% goes towards Germany, Belgium, Holland. Those are the three other countries. So we are growing. We have very small quantities. We do about 15,000 bottles now, but we sold about 8,000 last year because we are growing. And as you know, the wines are several years. So, we have lots of wine in the cellar, but not that much we are not selling that much yet because they're not there yet. But yeah, we are getting there. And next year will be about 12,000 bottles on sale. And yeah, where would I love to see Contrada Palui go? Well, I'd love it to be recognized. We are very young as a winery. But as you said, some people have noticed us, which is great. And we are trying to work on that. My dream is a 100-point Valpolicella Superiore. That's my primary goal and dream. I hope we will reach it, given the fact that there is no 100-point Valpolicella Superiore on the market yet, at least not to my knowledge.
And we hope that you're going to get to your goal pretty soon. And so you mentioned the markets, and for the professionals listening, like importers or maybe educators, if they want to use your wines on their courses, or somms who would like to see your wines in their wine lists, you said that 40% of the export goes to the United States. One of our, the biggest listeners base is in the US. Could you tell us, who do you work with in that market? Maybe you can name an importer there.
Well, yeah, I work with France and Western in New York. Lyle Raceback is the guy who set it up. And yeah, I was in the US a few weeks ago and just came back. And on my last day in New York, I actually went around with my importer and I found out, because he's not very talkative, I found out that my wines are in Italy, in New York, Manhattan, which was fun. And so we went there and we actually did a 2-hour tasting for people. And it was great fun because it was the first time I did a tasting in the US. So it's, people are very interested and very open to learning, and they really want to know everything about the wine, which is fantastic for us producers. What should imports educators and sommeliers know about the wines? Well, they do fall out of your standard Valpolicella in two ways. First of all, they're not dark. A lot of people, look at Amarone and Valpolicella and they expect a dark black wine like Dal Fornos. Mine are not dark. There are other producers who don't do them dark because we focus on the main varieties, the autochthonous grape varieties, Corvina, Corvino, Rondinella. And if you only use those, then your wines will be in a very beautiful ruby red, bright, brilliant color and not black. So that's one thing that needs to be, in a way, explained, unless they are people who actually drink a lot, in the sense of know a lot about wine and so on. So they probably will have encountered that style before. And secondly, they are really very much celebration of the fruit notes of these grapes, because I found out myself by making the first vintages that they had this incredible taste and this incredible minerality. If you look at Corvina, for instance, Corvina is a grape that is absolutely on the level of Pinot Noir. You have a grape that is highly complex in itself. You have fruit notes, you have cherries and forest strawberries and so on. Then you have flowery notes, you have balsamic notes, you have Corvinone, which gives you some peppery notes. So, in itself, the wine, even as a fresh wine, already has like 3-4 dimensions to explore. Never mind if you use wood or wooden barrels or other containers in the aging. So what we try to express is exactly this. We leave space to the grapes, to the fruit notes, to the flowery notes, accompanying them and trying to support them by the usage of wood and other containers, but not capping them, which is also why the wines have hardly any, or they have no residual sugar, because so they're more clear in their expression and they have more facets to explore, because residual sugar, of course, always covers up.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask you a question about your future plans for Contrada Palui. You actually said already a couple of sentences about some of your plans, like increasing the production and also 100 points Valpolicella Superiore. And we hope you're going to get there. And are you planning any experiments with new styles, or maybe you're planning also to start making Ricciotto? Or do you have any other plans for the future for Contrada Palui?
Yeah, Recioto is absolutely on the list. Thanks for mentioning that. Recioto I have not dared making yet. It's only the fifth year now that we are coming up with the wines. So I have never really dared to making it because it is very difficult to make a very good Recioto. And I'm more intimidated now than I was about a few months ago, because I drank the Recioto of a colleague of mine who was so good that I said, yeah, we'll see whether I ever dare making it. But that's definitely on the list. For the rest, no, I'm not planning to do any other wines. I make this rosé because my grapes, or the grapes up in Contrada Palui, are really good for making a French Provence style rosé, dry and fruity, but also mineral. But for the rest, I'm focusing on Amarone and Valpolicella Superiore. We don't do Ripasso, because for me, Ripasso is not really a wine style. It's something that doesn't really know whether it's fish or meat. So, as we say in German, so it's somewhere in between. But Valpolicella Superiore and Amarone, yes. And actually, the Valpolicella Superiore will become only one. So from next year onwards, there will only be Amarone and one Valpolicella Superiore and the Rosé. And we are trying to do them better and better and better every year. We have enough to do on that side. Really, not much time to do anything else.
Okay, got it. That's a pity for ripasso. To be honest, I like to drink ripasso with my family, with my friends sometimes. I mean, it's nice. And just to wrap up, and we see that we have a question from the listeners. But before we gonna ask that question, could you please give us some advice? Can you please share 3 of your wines and your favorite dishes to pair with each of this wine? It can be Italian, it can be maybe something else. Why not?
All right, sure. 3 of my wines. Well, to start with the rosé, I would absolutely pair it with Vitello Tonato, because being dry and mineral and very fruity and flowery, it really pairs well with Vitello Tonato, which is a bit greasy, but has a very subtle, in a way, a subtle taste, even though the sauce, of course, has quite a strong impact. Then the Valpolicella Superiore Graspo Alto, I would definitely pair with either simply with pizza because it goes well with that too, or with a light meat dish or cheeses, or as we eat a lot in Verona, affettati, which are like speck or sausage and cheeses and stuff like that. And of course, the Amarone is a bit more, always needs a little more of a stronger dish in a way because it is a strong wine. It has a high complexity. So there I would go for a tagliata, for instance, with rucola and Parmesan cheese. I quite love that. But of course, the classic dish would be, of course, a Fiorentina. But I think a tagliata would be great.
All right. Thank you for such good suggestions. And we have a question, as I mentioned before, we have a question from Andrei Batkirin. He's our fellow Italian wine ambassador. So here's his question. Is this more of a hobby or a business project? What is the business goal of such a small project? 3 hectares, if I understood correctly. What are the main distribution channels and where in Verona can we find your wines?
Okay. Yeah, this is a question I get several times actually, whether it's a hobby or a business project. It always depends on from what perspective or point you look at it. If you come from Alto Adige, 3 hectares are actually pretty big. The average vineyard property there is not even 1 hectare. There's a lot of wineries with 3 hectares. So in Verona, of course, it is very small. But if you do 15 to 18,000 bottles, we are now producing 15. Will this year, or we did last year, we will do 18 this year because we are reaching full production. With 18,000 bottles produced of the wine of the right kind with the right price, you can actually live of it, and you can live of it quite well. But of course, you need to deliver the quality that also allows you to ask for a certain price. And yeah, it is indeed always a bit of a thing where you go like, yeah, of course, I would also love to have more hectares if I could, but you have to buy them somewhere or you have to plant them, which is very difficult right now because no more vine rights anymore, but you would have to buy vineyards, which is very costly. But even 3 hectares allows me to very concentrate on getting the quality very high and very high up. And I'm very fortunate because we planted Contrada Palui's vineyards. Of course, we didn't know how it would turn out. We knew the soil was good, but in fact, in the end, it turned out really well. And the first years we gave the grapes to Allegrini, and they were the first then to be very happy with the grapes. So that was of course a great relief, and now we see that the wines are working as well, and it's turning out really well. So the main distribution channel is, of course, is what we call in Italian Horeca, which is restaurants, wine shops, places like this. It's not supermarkets because we are way too small for that and prices would be way too low. And private individuals, of course. In Verona, you can find the wines. If you want to buy them from the wine shop, you would have to come and visit me. If you, or no, you could go to Villafranca. There is a winery there, very nice one. What's it called? Enoteca di Villafranca, that has my wines. Otherwise, you will find them in a few restaurants, like in Pompiere, in the city center, has my wines. Pane e Vino, Trattoria Reale. Well, I just mentioned 3, 4, but yeah, Dalla Valentina, there are several restaurants that have them now. I mean, we are not super present, but we are present in some places, the Velvet, and we hope that they are the right place, and we hope there will be many more.
Oh, right. Thank you. So next time we all go to Vinitaly, we will know where to find the wines for lunch or dinner, like your wines. Okay, and it's time for us to wrap up the episode. Do you have anything else to add? Maybe there is something that I didn't ask, but you would like to share with us?
No, I think we said a lot of things. I hope that I gave answers that are comprehensible. I think in general, it is a challenge to set up a new winery from scratch because there was nothing there before. So plant the wines, wait a few years in order to get the first grapes, then start making the wines and then bringing them to the market. It's a long way. I didn't expect it to be that long, but it is quite a long way. We can use any kind of support we get, of course, on that journey. And as we all know right now, is not a supermarket condition in general for various reasons. But I see that people appreciate the style, they appreciate the way we make them, and also the transparency that we have in our winemaking. And therefore, we are looking forward to growing. And we would, of course, also love to have lots of visitors coming to taste them and maybe support our project.
Great. And we also hope that with this project, with Italian Wine Podcast, we can spread the word about your beautiful wines and Contrada Palui in general among not only VIA community, that we have a pretty strong community of professionals who are focusing on Italian wines, but also the wine lovers. Thank you. And thank you again for having time to have this conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. It was great fun. And yeah, wish you all the best and thanks again.
We need to go back to Bea.
Hello, guys. So that was such a wonderful interview. Really good job, guys. How are you doing now? Are you happy with it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I am, absolutely. I hope Rosa is. She's the initiator.
No, I'm pretty much happy. I really wanted to interview Hannes.
No, it was really, really a nice job. Really excellent. I sincerely thank you also for your time and effort to be in the same place and for doing this interview. Really, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, wrapping things up, for those who are interested to participate, just send us DM through our Instagram or mail our Italian Wine Podcast producer at info@italianwinepodcast.com. Thank you for everyone who's listening in, and thank you again, Roza and Hannes. That was such a wonderful interview. So, wrapping things up from Italian Wine Podcast. Bye-bye!
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.